and welcome to Book Club Corner, where every Wednesday we chat with an amazing author, a literary publicist or a literary publisher, or just a lover of the written word, journalists, for instance. But this is Book Club Corner, and I am Jewel Green, your host, where we will be chatting today with the amazing Kevin Hosein. And we have with us an author who has written 3 books so far, and his books are The Hungry Ghosts, The Repenters, The Beast of Kukuyo, and he holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Environmental and Natural Resources Management. He is the 2024 Walter Scott Prize winner for the historical fiction. He is the 2024 OCM Bocas Prize winner for Caribbean literature, as well as the 2018 overall Commonwealth Short Story Prize winner. And he has also won the Code Burt Award for Caribbean Young Adult Literature, and he's been longlisted for the International Dublin Literary Award. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here with us. Let me just say that was just a short list of the things you've accomplished. That by no means is everything he's done, viewers. This is a prolific author, and we love when we have people like you on the show, Kevin, because it gives authors something to aspire to, something to understand that exists out there. You know, because sometimes we don't know the entirety of what is available for authors to take on. So we want to thank you for being here today with us, and we're going to get into it. I am sipping on, you know how we do it in Book Club Corner, I'm sipping on some rosemary wine. We've been having sorrel wine, but having some rosemary wine today, and I can definitely say this wine is a little different. When I smell it, and I don't mean to get into it, because I don't even know if you're a wine drinker, right, Kevin?
Sometimes.
All right then, you know, when I smell this wine, it gives me such a sweet. So I originally thought this wine was going to be really sweet, so I was bracing myself, and then I sipped it, and it was not. So kudos to you again. You tricked me again. You fooled me, Mr. LLW Wines. You know, Mr. Lashley gives us wines, and we are so grateful for the sponsorship and for the support. But this wine, guys, get your rosemary wine. This one isn't as sweet as you would think. This one is good. Kevin, I have to get you a bottle of this rosemary wine. But you're in Trinidad.
Yeah, all the way here. Wish I was in Tobago, but
Don't we? So we could sip and chat together. But you're in Trinidad. What part of Trinidad are you tuning in from?
so I'm from Chaguanas, more central Trinidad.
Okay, well, we know Shogunas is where it's getting good deals. And as I had your wife on last year, and I was telling her the same thing, right? Shogunas is where it's getting good deals and all the good shopping and stuff. So you're in the thick of things.
Yeah, it's a good way on the show as well.
Listen, we're going on a quick break, and when we get back, Kevin, we're going to be getting into all your books, into all your awards, talking about your agent. How is it having an agent? Because a lot of authors don't invest in that, and I think you have a lot to share with us today about that as well. So we're going on a quick break, guys. Get your drink, get your snack. We're giving you the opportunity to catch yourself. If you're drinking government juice, or you're having some coconut water or chiller, you're having some chiller like Kevin Hosein, whatever is your fancy, get it and get right back here. We have so much to talk about here on Book Club Corner. Welcome back to Book Club Corner. We've been waiting on you patiently So let me tell you, we're getting into it because we have so much to discuss with this amazing author, Kevin Hosein. Kevin, let's start with that newspaper article we have of you receiving your win. Tell us about that moment when you heard that you had won that award. I don't know if they can bring it up on screen here for us. Wonderful. You won the $25,000, well, pounds, right? A prize. Tell us about this.
Sure. So this was for the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction, and this is, I guess, one of the more major literary prizes in, I would say, the West. And well, as you see, it focuses on historical fiction, which by itself is, what I would say, is an oxymoron, which means it's kind of opposite. Because, historical, you're trying to seek out truth, but it's fiction. So it's something made up at the same time. It's not the genre that I usually focus on, but my most recent book, Hungry Ghosts, focused on that with Indo-Caribbean, a period of history that involved Indo-Caribbean people in the barracks. The win was quite unexpected. I was just pleased to be longlisted and then shortlisted, and that was given out in an area called Borders in Scotland. So I was, on that same list, the same long list were writers like Z.D. Smith, Tan Twang Eng, um, pretty much people I think that were outside of my range, a lot more expertise than me. So I didn't expect to get so far with it. So it was unexpected, but it it was pleasant because it was the first time a Caribbean author had won that prize.
Mm. I love when our Caribbean people do good stuff. And looking at that book, Hungry Ghosts, I have a thing for book covers, right? Tell me about that book cover. I know this may be a small part of our discussion, but I love that book cover. Tell us about the idea behind this and how it ties into the themes and motifs of your book.
Sure. So the book cover is actually a segment of a painting by a by a person named Peter Doig. And well, I didn't pick it. Usually the publisher would pick it, but they thought that it's even a lot of the I would say a lot of the book deals with water, and because there's flooding and hurricanes and rituals that involve water, and I think that the water in the night, the dance, they thought that it evokes this sort of almost spectral, spiritual thing with the reflections, especially with the burst of stars overnight. Because a lot of the book focuses on the script natural landscape. And I think it's a fitting cover. So what's funny is that that's not the cover that I have right now in my hand. That's actually the one. Well, that's the one we have in Trinidad and the UK. And the one that I have, well, I have the US version with me, which is this one.
Oh,
And yeah, and so I call this the daytime version, and that one is the nighttime version. So it's two different covers.
yeah.
That's the cover that
So
we have there.
you would advise us to get it too, right?
No, no, no. It's the same, but it's just different covers, different territories. So it's not,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that idea, just to stick with that a moment, I love the idea of having a different book cover that you think may speak to a different culture or a different territory more than another. They say white is a color that we think represents purity in our Western culture, but it's not in the Eastern culture. White is a color that they try to stay away from. And red is a color we think very loud and, means notice me. And that's not at all what it means there. So I really like the idea. And I think authors should entertain that. Depending on where your book is being published, you want to think about what speaks to the territory and the culture of where your book is going to be published. So I really think that that's something to note. Thanks for that, Kevin. I want to talk about your other wins because you have quite a few. And when we look at the list of wins that you have, for instance, the International Dublin Literary Award, the Burt Award, the International Dylan Thomas Prize, the Walter Scott Prize, the Commonwealth Short Story. Are these all awards that you have put yourself up for? You know, you said, oh, there's an award out there, I think I should go up for it. Are these all awards you wanted to be in, or did someone identify them and say, Kevin, I think you'd be perfect for this?
So I wouldn't speak for all of them, but the majority of them is no. I didn't put myself up for them. The one that I did were the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, which is available for anyone in a Commonwealth territory, and it's free to enter. And I entered that for a good few number of years before winning in 2018. So the others, mainly the book prizes like the International Dublin Award, Walter Scott, Dylan Thomas, those were entered by the publisher. The OCM Bocas Prize, all those were not me. Um, I mean, they would inform me that they were entering it, but it wasn't me myself. That it wasn't my initial decision to do it. I'm glad they did because it ended up, if not winning, it ended up like on the short list of a lot of competitions. So the one that the one book is the Beast of Kukuyo, which I entered for the Burt Award, which is defunct now, but is one that was sort of run by, well, hosted by the Bocas Lit Fest that we have here in Trinidad. And it was specifically for young adult literature, which is for younger people, not children, but more for teenagers, older teenagers. I thought that was a really good initiative, but for a good few years it's been going now.
Teachers, you're a teacher by trade, as they say. That's where you started your working career, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about that in terms of how you're managing, authors, we have to have two and sometimes three jobs to fund our life. How are you managing your work life and your authorship life together? Because you teach biology, yes?
To a degree, well, now I teach it part-time. I tutor now because I can't manage it, the two at this point. I
Yeah.
managed it up until 2021, um, which, kind of in the middle of COVID, where we was doing the remote teaching thing, and I just sent Hungry Ghosts out to be published. And when it got published, I realized that there was a lot of traveling that I had to do. And me being a formscape teacher, it just wasn't compatible with leaving my students for, those bursts of time. But at the time, though, I did teach for 11 years while
Wow.
writing. And how I did manage that, because when it was just, writing and commitments like festivals or, attending things, the I mostly wrote on the weekends. And sometimes I mean, I'm a night hawk, so I would pass a lot of time in the night
Mm.
to write for 2 hours or so, and which isn't probably very healthy, but that's just what I did. It just became a habit because I was doing that all through secondary school. That's what I did because as you noted, my degree is not in literature. My degree is a science degree because I never did literature in
Mhm.
school. And so it was always something that was in the background of my life, background to what I would say, my bread and butter, like, what my trade was. It was a hobby. Now it's turned into a career, so I'm forced to take it more serious now, which I love to do because it was always my to do this. So, but now it's honestly it could be a little frightening that you now could do what you finally wanted to do. But yeah, that's it's just time management. I spend little time on social media. I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I just realized like how much attention social media, so I don't spend much time on it, and I realize I have a lot more time in a day.
Yeah, that is so true. I always look at pre widespread internet. I say widespread because there was a time it wasn't in the home. You'd have to go to the library or a cafe to use the internet. A lot of persons, but now it's right in your hands on your devices, right in your phone. And I am aware of how much time it spends, even if it's relevant, right? It's not that you're wasting time, but how much time we're spending on the internet, whether it's gathering information, whether it's what we're calling productive work. But we spend quite a lot of time there, and WhatsApp is taking all our time now. So, that's time we could have been writing. I probably could have had, 10 books by now, Kevin, if I would
Maybe
just stay off the internet. But I
you
loved,
wouldn't believe like how much hours it really takes when you're on
yeah,
it. Mm.
I love that you have that commitment. When we talk about your publisher, and you've mentioned that word quite often. You're looking at it from the perspective of your journey, which is to be traditionally published, yes?
Yes.
Are all three of your books traditionally published, or did you do any self-publishing along the way?
So I did have a self-published book at first, which was a collection of, and I don't usually include it, books that I've written because it's no longer available. Um, so I did a collection of short stories for, I would say, like in standard five, form one. But because I was a teacher and I knew other teachers, it was easy to get it out there to a few libraries and to get it to English teachers and so on. But there's a lot of hassle when it comes to self-publishing that maybe some people are up to it, but I'm not so much a marketing person myself. I just like to write. So
Mhm.
I would rather put that work on other people. And it helps because when you have one or two a team behind it, yeah, you have too many cooks could spoil the stew, but and everybody has their hand in it, but it helps to a degree to ground you, and you have an immediate audience when you traditionally published. It's just a lot more difficult to do it because the barrier of entry is really, really high. So the other three books, the Beast of Kukuyo, the Repenters, and well, Hungry Ghosts. The first two are published with what we call indie publishers, which means that you don't, it's not vanity publishing, so you don't pay them or anything, you don't pay to print anything, you don't pay anything at all. They publish it, you get royalties. It's just that the royalties mightn't be that big, but some publishers like People Tree Press, there's a lot of prestige that comes with it. My current publisher, well, publishers, because I'm published with Bloomsbury in the UK and HarperCollins, Echo in the US. I mean, those are bigger publishers, so you could afford to make a living on your writing from those. Again, it's just that the barriers of entry are really high. So I could see the temptation to self-publish to get something out there for people to read, but I I don't know. I did my thing was always to just get traditionally published.
Mhm. I sometimes go back and forth as well. When we talk about traditional publishing and we talk about, the standard, if for want of a better word, being quite high, and which will become a barrier for some writers. Do you see that as a relevant barrier, as a barrier that serves a purpose, or perhaps one that should be done away with? Just, kind of let everybody be, why don't you just take everybody's book kind of thing? What is your view on the pros and cons, as it would be, of being traditionally published versus the self-publishing? And a lot of people see self-publishing as something less prestigious. So, what's your take on it?
Sure. So you mentioned that the standard is high. The standard actually isn't high. There's a lot of crap that gets traditionally published. One name names, but there's a
Ah,
lot of and there's a lot of high quality stuff that is self-published. Like I have a few books from authors right here in Trinidad that I thought is quite high quality, and they did them themselves. The As for the barrier of entries, like does it serve the purpose? No, it doesn't. It's something that it's something to overcome, so to speak, or something to learn to navigate. Now, it's when you open the show, you said that you maybe the mission of this program is to like navigate that space that a lot of authors don't know about. That it's almost like a foggy land, this literary space, because we don't have mentors are sort of hard to come by, and there's not many stories of other authors we could read about or learn about. Usually you have to migrate in order to attain success. So I remember feeling like that when I was a teenager, and I just spent a lot of time acquiring information on, about agents, about traditional publishing, how exactly we could do this, and none of it really seemed to serve the purpose of being inclusive to authors outside of the main publishing regions. Times have changed a little now because people are craving more, people are craving different voices and different stories now. So maybe 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't like that, but now the market is a little different. So that's why, some of us here have been successful. Some of us could have broken through with traditional publishing. So the pros of it, as I said, is obviously, yeah, you could, it's, if not make a living, it's a very, very good side hustle at least. And there's also the prestige with traditional publishing. You get experts, you get to meet people who work with books all the time. You get to meet editors and proofreaders and publicists and artists, and who've worked on books, and maybe even books that you like, that you grew up with. And that's always a privilege. The cons of it is that sometimes, not me personally, but sometimes you may be tempted to make your book more accessible by making it less local, if that makes sense. I didn't feel that pull, but I've heard from other authors that they felt that pull.
yeah. I think your contribution has been extremely valuable in this space to have that conversation about that traditional publishing space, which frees you up to just be able to write. But the self-publishing, that freedom also comes with a price, and that price is that you as you put it succinctly, you have quite a few hassles to go with it. You have to market your book, you have to get it distributed, you have to get it into the store. And when you talk about meeting agents and meeting publishers and editors and all of that, it I noticed that you also have an agent. And in terms of your book being traditionally published and having an agent, could you elaborate? Talk to us about that, the possibility of perhaps a self-published author having an agent. Is it that agents only take on traditionally published authors, or the publishing house linked you to an author? Tell us about how it went for you.
Sure. So with agents, I should note that agents, it doesn't matter if you're self-published or traditionally published, or even if you're not published. What agents do is that they take on the potential of a person, the potential of a writer. Now, that might seem like a very difficult thing to gauge. So before I had these books, I had short stories. I said I entered the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, and I'd had short stories entered in some outlets and magazines before. So you could say I'd started to build a writer's resume, so to speak. And a lot of these stories are available if you can buy the anthologies or they're available online. And what the agent does is that the agent would take you on based on that writer's resume. But a lot of agents would not take you, would not have a contract with you unless you send them a novel or work like a collection of poetry or whatever you want to get into. So you have to show them that you've already completed this work.
Mhm.
What they would do then is that they would read the work, this unpublished work, and they would determine whether or not to take you on because now they would say, well, this is something that we could work on and that we could sell. Now, something to note is that you never pay your agent. The agent works for you. So the agent is not someone that you hire to help you navigate the space. The agent, if you make money, the agent makes money. So it's in their best interest to sell your stuff. And it's also in the best interest that you take an agent who is really excited about your work. Because if the agent is not excited about your work, they're not gonna put their all in trying to sell it. Um, so when it comes to it, the agent is a middleman, so to speak. The agent has access to a lot of traditional publishers and indie publishers. So they would take your manuscript, help you refine it, and then send it off to them. So it's another barrier of entry. That's really what they do. But my agent in particular um, is very good. I'm with an agency called Aitken Alexander. There was the agency that V.S. Naipaul belonged to, and the my agent in particular very much believes in the authenticity of the Caribbean voice, which I would not have took him on if he didn't believe that. So he doesn't force his hand. He doesn't tell me to tone down any um, Trinidadian English Creole or anything like that. He fully believes in what he's selling, and it's a mutual relationship, and that's how that works.
And listen, I can't say enough about what you've just shared. You're viewing Book Club Corner and you're getting gems straight from award-winning Trinidad and Tobago author Kevin Jared Hosein. We're going on a quick break, Jared. And when we come back, we're going to be getting into some of your books. We're going to be getting into what's happening, what's next for you, Kevin, and what you're looking forward to most for 2025. So please get your drink, get your snack. If you've finished them off, polish them off, get some more, and come right back. We're going to be back here with Kevin Hosein in the next few minutes. Welcome back to Book Club Corner. We're chatting today with Kevin Hosein, the award-winning Trinidad and Tobago author, and he has written a book, latest book, The Hungry Ghost. Well, it's just Hungry Ghost. I'm adding to your title, right? I'm now in your story, Kevin. This book that you have, because you have three, The Repenters, Hungry Ghosts, as well as The Beast of Kukuyo. I find that name, The Beast of Kukuyo, so enchanting. And then I saw the book cover, and there's a big chicken on it. Tell us about that. Tell us about, who is this Beast of Kukuyo? And how did you come up with this name?
So I'll say chicken, and everybody. Again, I didn't choose this cover, but I really love what the artist did with it
Yeah.
because the chicken is actually a small part of the story, but it encompasses the story is about. And people was wondering that chicken is the beast of Kukuyo, and as I know, so what the chicken represents, right? So these stories are is a detective, like a crime detective story. I guess think a Trinidadian spin-off of like Nancy Drew. And there's this girl that her classmate has been murdered, and she wants to investigate who did this. And this is set in Trinidad, where every week there's multiples of this. And so she becomes almost disenchanted with the news cycle because murders come, murders go. And she equates it to the Trinidadian society to being like chickens in a depot, in a coop, where the person would come and snatch up one of the chickens to be slaughtered, and all the other chickens would start flapping around, and they would go in a panic. And as soon as that chicken is gone, it just takes 2 or 3 minutes, and all the chickens are calm again until it happens. And I guess that's her metaphor of describing what the outrage in a news cycle when it comes to murders in Trinidad. So it was a metaphor for that. It's such a small part of the book, but I think it encompasses what the protagonist was feeling. So it's interesting that the publisher there got an artist that that particular image struck them, and they decided to put that on the cover.
I love it. I think that's one of the things that illustrators, artists do. They're able to pull on a very small thread and to make it a focal point where you may not even have seen it existing in the story, And I love that. And I love the explanation you gave of that juxtaposition between humans and chickens. I mean, how short is the attention span of a chicken, right? They will
Mm.
forget in 2 seconds flat. And it's crazy that we should even be aligned in terms of how we're looking at, but that goes again to, are we being lulled, into this sense of, oh, here we go again. It's not important. Another one, I bet X person did something to bring this on themselves, but not me. I'm not doing that. That's why it hasn't happened to me. So let me mind my business and carry on, kind of thing. But in our society where we are dealing with a high crime rate, and let's be honest, this is something happening globally. It may not be happening in all places at the same rate, but we're dealing with a rise in crime rates globally. And for your book, The Beast of Kukuyo, where the student has experienced a death that's close to her, how do you see this book in terms of its relevancy in what we're experiencing now? We have so many people who are going through the emotions of dealing with the grief of having a loved one, somebody close to them, murdered. How do you see this book as, or do you even see this book as something that perhaps perhaps may have a cathartic um, way to bring persons to, because I'm seeing that the student is proactive, eh? So is it
Mm.
something that you think may help persons at this time? This book, in terms of its relevancy, what we're going through in Trinidad and Tobago.
So that's an interesting question, and I'll give like a little backstory about when I was writing this book. So when I was writing this, it was for the Burt code um, competition that the Bocas was affiliated with. And this was, you write a manuscript and you enter it, and if you place first, second, or third, you will get a 2,500 initial print run of the book along with a cash prize. And that was just what made me want, decide to write a book. And I was like, I always wanted to write a detective story. And I was like, for all the crime that we have, there's not many crime stories. There's not many crime novels in Trinidad. And I wanted to write it from a point of view, as I said, sort of like Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. And then I realized that you can't set something like that in the Caribbean. It has to be its own thing. Because when it comes to killings, when it comes to the police procedurals, it's very different. Here in Trinidad, as I said, it's its own thing, and it would be its own thing in every other country. So you can't really follow the American or the British template for it. So I got more into thinking the plot, and I was thinking more of the psyche of having a child lose, because the child lost their mother, lost her mother to a killing, and she experiences a classmate, and she notices the trend again of people pretending that it didn't happen, like it didn't, like this person didn't exist, and you just move on. And so the novel kind of went from, yes, solving the crime, but also solving the psyche of the people of why this would happen. So it went a bit beyond, I guess, what I would say is young adult or teenage fiction, but I think teenagers are fit to read, um, these kinds of themes. So that's what came to mind with it. Fiction is a way in which you explore situations in which you contextualize things that are not in the active discussion of society, or that may be in the active discussion, but there's sometimes you want to say it in a way that it it comes across better as stories, as characters, because I think we in the Caribbean are natural storytellers, and that's why I wanted to get the point across.
Yeah. I I think you're right, Kevin. We are natural storytellers, and I think added to that resume, we're natural detectives. we we
Yeah.
listen. We find out your business in 2 seconds flat, right? Don't you try to hide anything from us. We know everything that's going down with all the neighbors. You just give us a second, we'll figure it out. Um, we're going on a quick break, Kevin. I'm having such an enjoyable conversation. There's so much information you're sharing with us, and thank you for being so open. We're going on a quick break. When we come back, we want to talk about briefly the themes and have you read aloud from one of your books. It's a special time at Book Club Corner for you to read aloud, and we can't wait for it. So, viewers, will be back in a few minutes to hear from Kevin Hosein. He's going to be reading from one of his books and talking about the themes that's running through all his books. So see you in a few minutes. And welcome back to Book Club Corner, where every Wednesday, right here in the beautiful capital of Scarborough, Tobago, we chat with publishing industry stakeholders and authors. And we have with us today award-winning author Kevin Hosein. Welcome back, Kevin. Kevin,
Thank you.
yes, listen, when we're talking about your books, whether we're including in the bunch the first self-publishing book that you did, do you see any themes, whether it's conscious or unconscious, right? Whether it was, as they say in Barbados, purpose work, right? Are there any themes running through your books as you see it?
Yeah, I would say maybe the most common theme running through my work is how people process grief. Not grief itself, and not the moments of sadness, but how people process it in different ways, how they react to it.
Hmm. That is so, I mean, listen, that is something we need to talk about more in society. You know, have more conversations, not just about the loss of persons, but just loss as a society. Are we dealing with loss? Because as we know, that fuels a lot of crime. If we are not
Hmm.
processing our loss, whether it's a job, whether it's a loved one, whether it's a prized possession, your home, um, your money, right? Are we processing, and from your perspective, are we people who process grief and loss well?
No, I don't think so. I'm not an expert on it. I I mean we do have services, memorials, rituals for grief. But there's always the hours in between where there's nothing. There's nothing but you and the shadows and the long nights. And maybe it was better, maybe it's a bit better in smaller communities, more close-knit communities, where I remember with my grandparents, where they lived in Carney, and they would just have their gate open, and people would people would just walk in, sit down on the rocking chair, and they would just talk. It's a very close-knit community, and there's probably very little places now where you would be comfortable to do that. And maybe it was a little easier for them, but now we've self-isolated a little bit, and it's almost something that is, I think some of us feel shame to express grief because some of our behaviors become performative, with social media, with different things, and some of us just flat out just want to ignore it. And there's almost a lack of reverence when it comes to loss and grief. I remember when I wouldn't get on this too long, but I remember like my cousin had died in a fire. And when the firemen came and when they had finished, I remember they were just talking about a football match, like they were laughing and talking about it. But then you realize that in moments like that, the world kind of just goes on. And you have to wonder now, when you experience loss, how much of, you just want your world to move on as well, with the rest of the people. You kind of just want to speed it up. I don't think this is something that is specific to Trinidad or the Caribbean. It could just be the limit to what we could feel or what we could process without any external help. But as you see, it's something that I write about, it's something that I like writing about, how various people process grief and how their home, how their culture, how their religion might affect that.
Yeah. Listen, as you were speaking there, Kevin, I started to become nostalgic. My maternal grandmother is from Caroni. She's originally from St. Vincent, but
Mm.
moved to Caroni when she got to Trinidad and they got married and stuff. And it's the same thing. It's a street where it's only family. It's a long street, so it's a good bit of them. And people just walk in there, no gates. They use hibiscus for a hedge, right? So that is a gate. They literally have a gap in the hibiscus for you to come in and go out, and a gap in the hibiscus for you to drive in. And people just walk in, sit and chat, and then they migrate back out into the street and go into their homes. It's a very respectful place, respectful of your own space. So there's no need for a gate and for barriers and for you to lock doors. And I tell you, I never went up there and met a locked door ever. It was, very jarring to me. And I guess part of the loss that we're dealing with as people is the loss of that freedom and the ability to just have porosity, right? Like osmosis, to be able to just move freely from one space to the next. Now we have to call and ask permission because you can't just walk in, right? You can't just go by your grandparents or even your parents now. It have a big gate, it have burglar bars, it have big dog in the yard, all sorts of things now. And I think that is something that we need to pay attention to, our loss of that communal and community space. So thank you for sharing that. It's something that we definitely need to look into. And, I'm sorry about the loss of your cousin. It's not a good way to
Yeah.
go. Yeah, it's a horrible way to
Mm.
go. And we have a minister who died like that recently. She died, perished in a fire, she and her two
Yeah.
children. So I think that's something important in your work in terms of looking at grief and how we're dealing with grief, and are we processing it well? Is that a conversation we usually have? And are we talking to each other about how we feel when we lose things? But without any further ado, Kevin, because I can't wait for you to get into that book. I'm getting some more wine, right? And I'm getting comfy. And what are you going to be reading to us today from?
So I'm going to be reading from the same book, Hungry Ghosts.
Oh,
I said
fantastic.
I have the daytime cover with me. So, but it's the same.
It's the
It's
same
the
book.
same. If you see it on a book and you see it's to the front, it's the same book. It's just again, it's for different regions.
Okay, great.
And I don't know if you want to just remind me really quick. Um, how much time do you think I should take for
Just
this?
2 minutes, 2, 3 minutes.
Okay,
Give us an. We don't want to give anything away. We want them to
tea.
buy your book, right? So
Yeah,
we just want to taste. Yeah.
yes. So this just to describe the scene really quickly, this scene occurs after the right after the child of a couple has died, and the name of the couple, the father's name is Hans, short for Hans Raj, and the mother's name is Shweta. Shweta drank and wept and vomited and never spoke the child's name again. There was no memento, nothing left behind for this world but memories bedimmed by unspoken sorrow. But more than a decade later, her daughter's name still resounded. It resounded that very minute. It was a name that neither she nor Hans had uttered even to each other since that day, and the fact that the rest of the barrack had seemed to forget her existence cemented that her son Krishna would never know that he once had a sister. Thoughts, years later, weren't prepared to be full thoughts, only fragments of malady and mortality. That skin still looks as warm and brown as the final minute of life surges within it, that the eyes are the first to go, that death is more concerned with stillness than sleep. How the dead wilt in one's arms, angling downward to the ground, as if impatient to melt into the earth. How old was this child when she died? 10 months? 11? Nobody could remember. Thank you.
Your treatment of that topic is superlative. I felt the grief. I felt it. I mean, I'm drinking here for fun, but Shweta is not drinking for fun. Many of us don't drink for
Mm.
fun. Let me just put in here a caveat. Ladies and gentlemen, we sip and chat on Book Club Corner. We do not overdo. We do not overdrink. We do it in moderation. Okay? And we do this to support our local winemakers. I'm just putting it out there. But Kevin, that was so you I don't even know how to explain. That was it was so precious. You know when you get a good pastry and all the crumbs just falling apart so deliciously and delicately, it felt like you were removing those very delicate layers of the life of this couple and how they've lost their child. I love it. I'm going to get into that book. But before we go any further, we're heading into the green room. And this is a space where we share insights and information with our publishers and with our readers and our authors. And today we're going to be talking about ISBN numbers and how much do ISBN numbers cost? And if you are for the first time applying for an ISBN number, there's a processing fee of $20. And then if you want one single number, it's 20 US. If you're applying for a block of 10 numbers, it's 50 US plus the processing fee if it's the first time, and so on and so on. But once you get to that 1,000 block of number application, do remember that you will have to wait on approval. The other 10 and 100 application you'll get right away. But once you're applying for 1,000 and more, they do have to oversee that application before you get through with it. I think that's really reserved for publishers. And we want to thank Caribbean Book Marketing Hub for supporting the Green Room. And there is an author directory that you should get into if you're a published author. Just scan the QR code, and there's a link at the bottom there. It will be on our Facebook, Instagram, and on our YouTube channel for the link. Join the author directory and get listed today. And we also want to talk about some of these services, book marketing services for self-published books and self-published authors. And if you have a book launch that you need to get done, media outreach, you want a book tour, Goodreads, book review or Amazon book review campaigns, author websites and branding, and marketing plans, you can call Caribbean Book Marketing Hub TT at 761-8790 and find out how you can get help with your book marketing. And it's mostly for self-published author, because we know there's a machine behind being a published author traditionally. Yes? Kevin, tell us before we go some of the advice you would give authors that you want to share with them based on your experience and based on what you think authors should know that perhaps they just don't.
Sure. So I would say, and I'll just echo what I said before. If you're planning on getting a literary agent, don't go with anyone that you have to pay. Remember, they will get paid when you get paid. Like when they help you get paid. I think that there's a lot of misinformation about that out there. Now, when it comes to just that's publishing, and once you get in there, the rest will work out for itself. As you said, it's a machine that that helps you along the way. As for general writing advice, I would say I would say read a lot. I mean, it sounds like generic information, but read good books, read good stories, read bad stories, because when you read a bad story, you I wouldn't say it gives you confidence to know that you could write better, but when you read a bad story, it's just as important to realize the things that you don't want to do as well as the things that you want to do. So that's what I did for a long time, because now it's an active discussion that you have with yourself, that when you're writing your story, you'll be like, okay, I don't want to go in this direction. This is something that I don't want to do characters. It just doesn't work for me. So when you read a lot, you process a lot of that in your writing, and try to write things that and again, it sounds stereotypical, but try to write things that are true to yourself. And when you do that, it ends up being a lot different than chasing a trend. Because by the time you actually catch that trend, the trend finish. Like vampires. By the time you write your vampire book, Twilight already gone,
Oh
and
gosh.
they on to the next thing.
Tell us, Kevin, where we can find your book. We don't want the authors and the listeners and viewers to go away not knowing. Tell us everywhere we can find your book to purchase.
Sure. So if you're in Trinidad, you can get it in Paper-Based Bookshop on Alcazar Street, Port of Spain. There's also a bookstore called Scribbles and Quills in Chaguanas. There's one in St. James called Tales and Treasures. You, I don't know everywhere where the book is stocked, unfortunately. I know it's in some RIKs, but I can't tell you which ones. But the first one that I listed, Paper Base, is the most reliable one. If you have no if you have no problem with Jeff Bezos and Amazon, it's available on Amazon as well.
I like that.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
Kindle and audiobook as well on
Very
Audible.
good. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for us. But go get this book, Hungry Ghost, The Repenters, as well as The Beast of Kukuyo. An amazing story. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Jared, and for sharing your story and your experiences and your knowledge. They were vital to making sure that our authors and those who want to be authors, potential authors, chart their course in the best way possible. We're wrapping up, and before we go, we just want to say be kind to yourself, be good to each other, and as they say, reach for the stars. Continue to do that, and we'll see you next week, Wednesday, when we chat with yet another local amazing author right here on Book Club Corner. See you next week.